Hello, welcome. Um, I'm just going to share my screen really quick and we are going to go into reading view. Okay, so this is a presentation that I made in August 2022 as part of the Co-op Factory, a meetup group for co-op makers. It's all volunteer run in Bellingham, Washington. Um, and my name is Haley Steele. I'm a PhD candidate in cultural studies at UC Davis, and I'm part of the steering committee of Cascade Cooperatives here in Bellingham, in Whatcom and Skagit counties. My email's down there if you want to reach out to me. This presentation is tentatively called What are Cooperatives? Why are they so cool? This is kind of a co-ops 101 talk, so some basic stuff. I hope that you'll consider sharing this presentation with friends who want to start co-ops, and I just wanted to make this information available for those who couldn't make it to the meeting on Thursday. So, what are cooperatives? Let's start with looking at some definitions. So this is a definition offered by the ICA, the International Cooperative Alliance. Co-ops are people-centered enterprises owned, controlled, and run by and for their members to realize their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations. So that's kind of a general way of defining cooperatives. I kind of like the way Dr. Keith Taylor, who's a cooperative development researcher at UC Davis, kind of focuses in on certain parts of co-ops that make them special with his definition. So he kind of goes on to define cooperatives as they're designed to be stakeholder owned and controlled, meaning a specified user class of the firm, such as workers or consumers, is the residual claimant, not some non-user investor as is seen in a traditional shareholder-owned firm. So I know that's like kind of a big bulky thing there, but the thing to really, I think, focus on is the term residual claimant, or just the concept of residuals. In typical businesses and typical firms, you have profits, you have this money that kind of gets pulled away from the community often and goes out to these non-user investors. Whereas with cooperatives, you have residuals that go back to the workers and the consumers and that stay in the community of the people who use the cooperative. So that's kind of a big sticking point on what it is for something to be a co-op. Dr. Taylor's written a number of articles where he goes into this, and also the book Governing the Wind Energy Commons. So you can kind of get into the nitty gritty details if you read more of his work. Another way to define a co-op, or kind of make sure you're checking all the boxes on what a co-op is to look towards the okay, I always mispronounce it. I believe it's Rochdale principles. My apologies for those from the UK who are cringing right now. The seven principles, which were established in 1844, and anything since then that has evoked the term cooperative, kind of has to have all seven principles. It's sort of a way to almost like a litmus test, to say, okay, does it have all these things? That's what makes it a cooperative. What are co-op networks? Bellingham style, so kind of focusing on our local situation, or at least I'll try to. So a co-op network has many kinds of cooperatives, working together while maintaining autonomy, because autonomy and independence is one of the seven principles. So types of co-ops that you might find in a cooperative network: you might have worker co-ops, which are owned and democratically controlled by the workers. You might also have consumer co-ops, which are owned and democratically controlled by consumers. And if you look in the background over the shoulder of the dude, the worker co-op dude there, in this ridiculous meme I made, you see hybrid co-ops, kind of hiding there. And hybrids, you'll sometimes have co-ops where workers and consumers, work in alliance, or workers, consumers, and some other group, work in a type of alliance to do the ownership and the control. So hybrids are a thing, and they do happen. Social cooperatives, that's something I'm really excited about. That doesn't get talked about enough, at least in the US. Like in northern Italy, there's a lot of talk about social cooperatives, and we kind of need a little more attention to that here, I think. So social co-ops use some form of cooperative model to provide social services. And this sometimes means they do contracts with the state, and basically they're an alternative to like the privatization of services. So in the US, we have a lot of folks kind of getting, alarmed or complaining about, certain services like youth prisons being privatized, and how it ends up with these weird incentives to put more youth in prison, and then you get corruption and all this goofy stuff when you have a non-user investor model controlling, these services. They're contracting with the US government, but they're still, controlled by investors in such a way that they need infinite growth, so blah 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 blah, and then you end up with like a really broken social service. So social co-ops are this cool way to make sure that the control of the social service stays in the hands of the people that use the social service. And we even have one of those here in Bellingham, that we can talk about next time. Housing co-ops, democratically controlled and often owned by those who live there. There are a number of kinds of housing co-ops. The kind you hear about the most, is owned by a land trust, and but sometimes you'll have like rental co-ops where the renters use a cooperative model to make decisions. And there are many types of housing co-ops, sometimes called co-housing, but definitely a big part of cooperative networks. Credit unions are a form of consumer co-op. Producer co-ops are owned and democratically controlled by those who produce similar types of goods. We have a couple of those in Whatcom County, like a meat producers co-op, and I believe a woodcutters co-op. So producer co-ops are a thing. And purchasing co-ops or shared services co-ops, so groups of businesses in the same industry that form a collective unit to buy supplies, services, etc. So very basic rundown of different kinds of co-ops that you might see in a network, working in a networked way where they still have autonomy from each other, but are sometimes, finding ways to support the growth of other cooperatives. So some examples of co-op networks, and I put this important SpongeBob meme in there for the internet haters who like to pretend that co-op networks don't exist. It's the weirdest thing. Online people say there's this like line, co-ops have never worked, or co-ops, it's like, no, it's not true. And I have a long rant, but I made this meme to address that problem. So, okay, so some examples of successful cooperative networks. We'll have two long established co-op networks and then kind of a new one. So we've got Northern Italy, Spain, the Pacific Northwest. Real quick, Northern Italy, in the Emilia-Romagna region in Northern Italy, which I had a chance to visit this summer, and it's so cool. This region, it may have the greatest density of cooperatives in the world. Co-ops account for 30% of the region's GDP, and its residents enjoy the highest mean income in Italy. And that's not a coincidence. Like, the presence of co-ops keeps wealth in the region. Very cool. Many cooperative networks interact and support each other in different ways in that region. So it's like many networks networking within networks. There's like so many networks. And yeah, there have been many books written about this region. If you want to start reading about it, 2 articles that just kind of get into some of the nitty gritty, I put there, so you can research it more. Spain, there are co-ops and co-op networks in Spain. In Spain's Catalan region, there are over 1,000 worker-owned enterprises. Many types of co-op networks are going on in many sectors. The Mondragon Corporation is, I believe, the world's largest co-op. I'm pretty darn sure about that. It's a federation of more than 100 co-ops that have sort of formed a federation, and it employs over 70,000 people. The 2015 revenue was at 12 billion euros, which is the same as $12 billion because those two currencies are equal right now. But yeah, so large, successful cooperative corporation that's a worker co-op, so owned and democratically run by the workers. And worker co-ops in general generated 3,548 new jobs in Spain in 2021, despite the pandemic. So we definitely, in Spain saw cooperatives and worker cooperatives tend to get the most focus in Spain, but there are many other types of co-ops there. These co-ops were resilient even during a time when other forms of business were seeing job loss. We'll get to why that is in a bit. Our local co-op network, Cascade Cooperatives, was established in 2016. It covers Whatcom and Skagit counties, and it includes worker co-ops, consumer co-ops, producer co-ops, social co-ops, credit unions, and hybrid co-ops. A new website was launched for it just last week, so check it out at Cascade Co-ops, thecooperatives.coop. And Cascade Cooperatives is in the process of formalizing its bylaws, so the different co-ops in Cascade Cooperatives are working to, figure out how they're going to manage like that structure. And so it's kind of, it's important to sometimes take these processes slowly to make sure everyone gets a voice. So the bylaws are in process right now, to my knowledge, is what I've heard. So let me see. You can use this QR code to visit the new website, where we have an interactive map up that has co-ops and co-op affiliated organizations in the region. So nice to check that out and see how the co-op movement is doing locally. Let's see, networked co-op networks, kind of a mouthful, in the Pacific Northwest. In July of 2022, late July, NWCDC, or the Northwest Cooperative Development Center, which is a nonprofit that does cooperative development based in Olympia, hosted the first regional meeting of co-op networks for the Pacific Northwest. A number of networks were at the gathering, including Cascade Co-ops, Olympic Co-op Network, South Sound Cooperatives, Oregon New Economy, and Symbiop, which kind of represent the Portland area, Spokane Workers Cooperative, and I believe some Coast Sound folks were either present or we met in a Coast Sound facility. But yeah, this was kind of it was the first regional meeting of folks from different co-op networks, and it's kind of a gesture towards figuring out how to network, and things are still in process and deciding what this is going to look like. So this is an emerging network of networks here in the Pacific Northwest between cooperative networks. Very exciting stuff. Why are cooperatives so cool? Why am I as a volunteer here doing this and excited about this? Okay, so co-ops are more resilient than other kinds of businesses. And this has been extensively studied. I was feeling lazy, so I only put two studies up here. But yeah, co-ops do a lot better than traditional business models, especially in times of crisis. And here's a graph I found, that was from a study in Quebec, that was showing co-ops surviving at nearly a double rate compared to all businesses during times of economic downturn. And interestingly, to my knowledge, in Bellingham, we didn't lose a single cooperative during the pandemic, and we lost a lot of other types of businesses. And, myself and some other co-op organizers were sitting down a few days ago and realized, oh, wow, wait, we didn't lose a single co-op during all that crisis, and there are reasons for this. Co-ops are more resilient. The proof is in the pudding. Okay, so there are many benefits to co-ops: better ecological performance than other types of businesses. They promote the values of democracy. There's a better distribution of money into the local economy than traditional small businesses, actually. So, small businesses are awesome, and co-ops, are even more awesome. I hesitate to say that because there's some small businesses that I dearly love. So small business owner friends, don't get mad at me for this. But I mean, co-ops do distribute wealth into the community in an even more equitable way, especially like a worker co-op, where the workers are all being paid equitably as worker owners, or a consumer co-op. Like we look at our local community food co-op that has like a community farm fund where they're supporting local farms and like doing all this cool stuff using the money that comes in. So instead of having that money go out of the region, it's staying in the region, and it's going towards keeping our local economy robust and resilient. Worker co-ops can be bossless workplaces. Very, very fun model. Many worker co-ops write their bylaws in such a way so that there are no bosses. Such co-ops often use consensus process to make decisions. So you can actually make a bossless workplace as a worker co-op. But some worker co-ops do have a voting structure, so you vote in the boss. There are different ways of structuring it. A lot of options there. Union co-ops are also totally a thing, and sometimes it makes sense for a co-op, even a worker co-op, to unionize. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. If you're a union nerd, you can have a union co-op, and you can learn more at the U.S. Union Co-ops Council website. So starting a co-op, especially in Whatcom and Skagit counties and greater Washington state, this is kind of more for folks in those regions. Some local resources. So we have the Co-op Factory meetup in Bellingham. It's an all volunteer place to just come and work on figuring out whatever the next steps are if you want to make a co-op or want to join a co-op that's being formed. There's also the Northwest Cooperative Development Center. It's based in Olympia. It serves Washington State and beyond. And it's a co-op development organization, and it's a nonprofit. So kind of a different model than a laid back meetup group, but they're also doing a lot of work to support co-ops, especially co-op transitions, where maybe a business owner wants to retire and sell their business to their workers, and NWCDC can help facilitate that process. So they have some neat resources there. Also Cascade co-ops, based here in Whatcom and Skagit, and once your co-op exists, they can help you with like co-op marketing and other things. They can add you to the map, and you'd be added, your co-op would be added to some of their resources. So folks would know that your co-op is being launched, and they can help out with some of that stuff once your co-op's formed. So my recommendation for next steps, if you're starting out, if you're just thinking, there's this idea I have for a co-op, I'm thinking maybe I want to start a co-op coffee shop, or maybe a co-op electricity company, something like that. Talk about it, find places to share the idea and workshop. The more minds you have on it, the better. Connect with like-minded cooperators. You can do that at the Co-op Factory meetup group, or we have a listserv as well for folks to sort of do online email conversations. And you can find that listserv. I made a tiny URL for it, tinyurl.com/let's-make-co-ops. So if you go there, you can click subscribe, and bam, you'll be on the local, Whatcom and Skagit County listserv for co-op makers to share ideas and workshop and get the word out. So eventually, let's take a moment and think about like long-term visioning, even though you're probably not there yet, but it's nice to know what some of the next steps might be. Eventually, once you have a group together, you'll want to drop a business plan. You'll make bylaws. You'll work on things like a marketing strategy, like a funding strategy, and incorporate, as a cooperative or a housing situation, whatever it is that you're making. Eventually there will be some interaction with the state to finalize it. So those are kind of some of the things that you can sit down and work on together once you have a group together to form your co-op. And the nice thing about the Co-op Factory meetup group, the co-op makers meetup group, the Co-op Factory, is you can just come and like bring whatever paperwork you're working on. And if you want to co-work like in space with other co-op makers, and even potentially get a little advice from folks who've written bylaws before or something, that's a place to come. So more info on how to find the Co-op Factory. Right now we're meeting in the Bellingham Makerspace. So you can go to tinyurl.com/co-op factory to get more info on that. Also, there's no need to rush. You can create a co-op in your spare time after work. It can take a couple months or years to get a co-op off the ground, and that's okay. It's okay if if it only takes a few weeks or something. That's amazing if it does, but it's okay to take it slow. And I often tell people, like, you want to kind of plan for the long haul and say, okay, we'll plan to meet, once a month, or have, 3-month check-ins or whatever the thing is, so that you can fit this in your spare time. So I'm just going to give you these local resources again. Definitely come visit us at the Co-op Factory. Last Thursdays is when we're meeting right now, but be sure to check in case we change that. Last Thursday, 6 to 8 at the Bellingham Makerspace as of autumn 2022. All right, thank you so much, and happy cooperating. Welcome to the age of co-opportunity.